And of course, our hardware team, the same team that delivered unprecedented performance with Xbox One X, is deep into architecting the next Xbox consoles, where we will once again deliver on our commitment to set the benchmark for console gaming.
Wait a second, did he really just say Xbox consoles? Consoles in the plural? So yeah, that was Phil Spencer at the Microsoft E3 2018 media briefing telling us, as if we didn't already know, that next-gen hardware is in development. But you know, Microsoft do love to include little Easter eggs in their announcements. I mean, this is the firm that showed off the Scorpio engine SoC from Xbox One X and its main board 17 months before it actually came out as a full retail unit. And so I think the point I'm making here is that this mention of a plurality of Xbox hardware, it isn't a mistake or a slip of the tongue. There is more than one new Xbox in development. And this was backed up by reports from Thurrott.com, a reputable Windows and Microsoft focused website that tells us that the next-gen Xbox is codenamed Scarlett, with 2 T's. And it's set to arrive in 2020. And guess what? It's described as a family of devices. Now, in the here and now, Xbox One, of course, is a family of devices in its own right. We have a cheaper base unit and a more capable X machine, offering a big increase in graphical fidelity, improved performance and such like. But this concept of more than one next-gen Xbox, I mean, what's that about? So I've been thinking for a while about the possible permutations then, and I'd like to share some ideas. So let's kick off with the first option, a true, full-blooded next-gen console accompanied by a much cheaper streaming box. Now, I've already made a video about the technologies available to both Microsoft and Sony for a next-gen console, so check that out in the video description below. But the streaming box, what's that about? Well, at E3, Phil Spencer talked about a platform for streaming games to a multitude of devices, and smartphones there are the obvious example. Now, I've also said in the past that cutting-edge technology required for a next-gen console is only getting more expensive. So the notion of the next Xbox being quite pricey isn't really far-fetched. I mean, look at the $500 Xbox One X. Streaming would move all of the expensive kit into the cloud, and a phone, a tablet, a smart TV, anything like that would be able to play Xbox games. So why not release an Xbox branded streaming box too with a standard controller? It's an interesting idea for a family of consoles, a full fidelity experience from local hardware, or a slightly laggier, compressed version of the same games available via streaming. I think it could work. I've seen streaming systems that produce impressive results. And so yeah, this idea of a streaming box is an option. That said, in his annual E3 interview with Giant Bomb, Phil Spencer went further, talking about getting games like Hellblade playable for people who don't own consoles, who may not even own a TV, and for those that do, the vast majority of those smart TVs already contain the decoder chips and USB ports required to make a streaming box kind of irrelevant. So yeah, it is an option, but possibly not what Phil was talking about specifically. So let's talk option 2 then. Pretty simple this. The new Xbox family consists of the full power next-gen machine, but Xbox One X becomes the new base unit, replacing the S, perhaps with a smaller, cooler, cheaper 7nm version of the Scorpio engine and a more refined, cheaper memory setup. And there is much to commend this theory. First of all, those core gamers who bought the X get extra longevity from their machine. And rather than targeting 4K resolution, the X delivers similar visuals to the next-gen hardware, but just at lower resolutions and lower frame rates. I mean, the X has a 6 teraflop GPU, and right now it's mostly used for running S games at higher resolution, but it could easily do more. Secondly, I'm going to refer back again to Phil Spencer's Giant Bomb E3 interview. He talks about rebalancing CPU and GPU for next-gen, and also discusses higher frame rates, 60 FPS gaming and 120Hz display support. Now we know how this CPU-GPU rebalancing is likely to happen. It's all about pairing Radeon GPU hardware with the new Ryzen CPU technology, which offers a big boost over the Jaguar CPU clusters in current-gen consoles. So yeah, why not? 60 FPS on the actual next-gen machine, 30 on the new entry-level X, and maybe running at a lower resolution too. I kind of like the idea, and I think it has legs. But what it does do is limit developers from getting everything they want from the new hardware. They can't really target everything Ryzen is capable of if they also need to support the Jaguars in the old machine. And this is kind of crucial really, because out of all of the new components available, Ryzen is quite possibly the only true generational leap over Xbox One X available. I also think this strategy kind of relies upon Sony treating PS4 Pro as their new base machine. It's the only way we'll see multi-platform support for this concept. And try as I might, I can't see it. Sony, you see, is still wedded to the concept of a full generational leap. I mean, Mark Cerny stressed that pretty clearly when I spoke with him about PS4 Pro back when it was launched. So, nice idea, potentially good for existing X owners, but I think that a Scorpio Slim, if you like, only has a limited lifespan, though it would be the cheaper entry-level Xbox I feel we're going to need. I mean, looking at the full next-gen piece of hardware, it's going to require a big processor, tons of RAM, and some kind of solid-state solution to properly deliver a next-gen console experience, and that's going to be really expensive. But what if? Well, what if Microsoft tries something different? So let's talk about a prospective next-gen machine then. We know that the actual game-changing part of the design is likely to be the CPU, and if you look at the actual amount of silicon area Ryzen takes up, well, on a next-gen 7nm chip, the space required is about the same as the area occupied by the current-gen Jaguars at 16nm. So arguably, the biggest next-gen upgrade is actually pretty cheap. So why not produce a cheaper next-gen machine and a more powerful premium level one? Both with Ryzen, both capable of running the same next-gen games. The difference between them would be pretty similar to what we have now between Xbox One S and the X. One runs at a higher resolution than the other. A smaller GPU, perhaps targeting 1440p, would be cheaper to produce, and it probably wouldn't need as much RAM. And in turn, the requirements of the storage solution would also decrease, making for a much cheaper unit. I'll be honest, this is the only way I can see a next-gen box becoming available at a reasonable price point. Storage and RAM are stupidly expensive right now, even with Microsoft's buying power. But there are other options, scaling in the other direction. So here's the thing, when silicon is fabricated on the production line, not every chip is perfect. They have defects, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the chip is useless and should be thrown away. So here's a GTX 1070 PC graphics card, and here's a 1070 Ti. It's the same memory, the same chip, yet the Ti is more powerful because it has more of the GPU active. GTX 1080, it has faster memory, but again, it's the same chip, a fully enabled version in fact, and you pay a premium for it. In every PS4 Pro, Xbox One or X on the market, you're not getting the fully enabled chip. 2 compute units are disabled on the base unit, 4 on the enhanced consoles. But here's the thing, the Xbox One X development machine does feature the fully enabled Scorpio engine, 6.6 teraflops of power versus the standard unit 6. Oh, and it has 24 gigs of RAM instead of 12, and a 1 terabyte SSD instead of a 1 terabyte mechanical hard drive. And this opens up the possibility of a premium elite console, essentially the same machine as the standard one, but with more graphics overhead and faster loading, be it via improved storage or a huge RAM disk. Toss in a second generation elite controller and you're good to go. It's definitely viable, and while the PC market has established that you can offer premium models with a relatively small performance bump, I don't see it as a viable move for consoles really, and it doesn't fundamentally address the problem that a true next-gen leap in power is going to result in an expensive console. With this plan, the premium model would actually be more expensive as opposed to making the standard one cheaper. So this idea, while viable, I kind of don't think it's going to happen, as I don't really see it helping the consumer that much. Finally, and perhaps most obviously of all, I mean, my speculation so far has all been about the notion of a family of consoles currently in development. but that only really cropped up in the Thurrott report. Phil didn't actually say that, and he may have simply been reiterating on the philosophy behind Xbox One X, the notion of new hardware always being in development to get the latest tech into the hands of gamers faster, sort of like the smartphone model perhaps. However, there is a difference in that meaningful increases in processing power come from new silicon manufacturing processes. 28 nanometer, 16 nanometer, 7 nanometer. Whatever's beyond that is years away from arriving, so I can't really see why Phil would be talking about kit set to arrive in, say, 2022. Now, of course, there could be many more ideas for next-gen hardware. I mean, Switch has been a bit of a game changer, and maybe, just maybe, a 7 nanometer SoC downclocked could run a specially patched selection of Xbox One games for portable play. Really though, give it a few years and the arrival of 5G cellular, and I think we'll be streaming them on phones and tablets everywhere. Streaming has a lot of potential, and there's a reason why Microsoft and EA have revealed gaming over IP platforms, and I know of at least 2 more big players set to make their own announcements in the fullness of time. But that's all a topic for another video. In the here and now, I hope you enjoyed this one. Do like and subscribe for more Digital Foundry content, and ring the bell to ensure you get instant notifications of all of our new videos. And if you want to support the team further and get superb quality video downloads for your efforts, well, go to digitalfoundry.net and consider supporting the DF Patreon. But that's all from me for now. Thanks for watching.